Hello everyone, I'm your narrator from Grave Hush, and I'm here to help you unwind tonight. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep, so before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, get cozy, take a deep breath, let your body sink into the stillness. It's time to relax and let the story carry you into sleep. Our first story tonight. My father got sent one final delivery. I wish I'd never opened it. A truck pulled into my driveway. It was run down, rusted, and squealed as it grinded to a halt outside my home. I watched through my window in interest as a thin whip of a man and his pudgy little sidekick opened the back of the truck. The steel on steel created a sharp screech that pierced my ears and made me wince. The two men climbed into the back of the truck. I heard them yelling orders at each other from the interior, seeming more hurried than aggressive. No, quickly, over there. You gotta tie that one down, it's fragile. My house is the only on the street that isn't abandoned. So I knew whatever was in there was for me, or perhaps an order from my late father he placed before he passed. Either way, I waited in nervous anticipation for whatever the hell these two men were pulling from their truck. Finally, after a grueling 10 minutes, the men re-emerged. The short fellow dropped to the road first, landing not so gracefully on the heels of his work boots and nearly toppling forward. The lanky man came out more gracefully. He had a trolley stacked with 5 boxes that he carefully and slowly rolled out. Even with his grace, the wheels clattered to the paved road. "Fucking hell, Topher, be careful," the short one bellowed as they began towards my house. I decided to meet them halfway up my driveway. "Hello man, my name is Topher, and this lovely chap is my partner Humphrey." He spoke with a certain elegance, like he was trying to serve me at a fancier restaurant and upcharge me for the Wagyu. "We got your packages, straight from Wisfield Labs, kept private and confidential as you requested." I looked down at the boxes. Each was labeled Dr. Kensong's Eyes Only, my father's name. I raised my hands. "I can't accept these. Sorry. You'll have to take them back." The two gentlemen looked at each other before looking back at me. Humphrey removed his cap and scratched his balding head. "But miss, we were told to take it right here. No exceptions today." He looked nervous, and before I had a chance to speak, he quickly added, "So can't we just leave them here?" Topher slapped the back of Humphrey's head, causing him to stumble forward a bit. "It's no problem. We'll make a call and get this sorted. May we remain parked over yonder while we take the call?" I nodded. He tipped his hat and they brought the boxes back to the truck, but didn't reload them. Topher drew an old flip phone from his pocket and immediately began dialing. I was never permitted to accept my father's packages. He always demanded I send them away until he got home. He worked for the government, a head scientist in a research division revolving around some medical field. I never was told the details. I wasn't allowed to know. I only ever caught glimpses of what he brought home, chrome tools that looked like futuristic chainsaws, welding irons, and other very non-medical equipment. Whenever he slipped up and I saw, he would loudly and aggressively demand I keep my mouth shut about it, even slapping me on a couple occasions to keep me in line, though I never dared slip out of it. He would tell me if he ever died, I wasn't allowed in his study. I was to keep sending packages away, and I would never sell the home. "Just let it rot," he would say. "Nobody is allowed to see." Last month, he died in an accident at work. All I was told is it involved a heavy vacuum-sealed location and a pressure change. Googling those words, I found out about the Bifford dolphin accident, and that's all I needed to know. This was the first package that arrived since his death, and even after he was gone. I dare not go against his words. After a few more minutes, I went back inside and began making myself a coffee. Dad's locked study felt darker than usual, like there was some kind of thing living behind it. A test subject for my father's experiments, or a creature from another world, waiting for the doors to slide open and let it out. Though deep down I knew it was just strange tools and paperwork stamped with government seals. Though whatever was written on those documents would probably be just as scary as a strange beast. Asterisk, my phone began to buzz in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a private number. Slowly I pulled it to my face. Hello, Kim speaking. Afternoon, Kim, my dad's voice spoke. I immediately dropped my mobile to the floor and it landed with a clatter, skidding under a cupboard. I knew it was him. He only ever called from private lines, and I had been mourning his tone of voice since I learnt he died. After the shock wore off, I quickly skid across the floor on my knees and fetched the phone. The call still running. Dad. Dad, is that? How? What? Tears streamed down my cheeks and pooled at my knees. Are you done? He responded bluntly. It doesn't matter how I'm calling, but I am. Bring the boxes inside, leave them in my study, but don't linger. Goodbye, Kim. Then nothing as the call ended. I stared down at my phone. The now blank screen stared back. My father gone again, as quick as he returned. I dragged myself to my feet and looked towards the front door. I slowly shuffled over, snot pouring from my nose that I fruitlessly cleaned with my sleeve. As I cracked the seal to the outside world, the two men were already waiting, the boxes, right in my face. We know where to go, ma'am, Ken informed us. Topher said softly, I'm sorry for your loss. My heart thundered in my chest. None of this made sense. How were they informed? How did my dad call? Being in total shock, I stepped out of the way and watched them enter my home without a word. As they got close to the study, I realized they didn't have a key, and neither did I. Guys, those are locked. I squeaked out. Humphrey turned and smiled at me, withdrawing a small silver key from his pocket. Not a problem, Miss. As the key slid into the lock, I winced, and my cheeks stung as if they were just struck. The two men pushed the boxes into the study, vanishing into the inky blackness of the forbidden space. After a small argument between the two, they exited, tipping their heads towards me. Everything will get better soon, ma'am, Topher kindly offered. I promise. The two men waved me goodbye and left my house. I turned back towards the study, and the doors were left open, the darkness lashing out like tendrils, luring me in. I walked up and grabbed the two doors, ready to yank them shut, but I couldn't help and quickly scan the space. As expected, it was mostly just paperwork on desks, filing cabinets, and books lining shelves. Strangely, none of the chrome tools were to be seen, potentially already removed. As my intrigue took hold, I stepped forward, my foot colliding with a trash can. It rolled and bumped the side of the box stack. The highest box must have been heaviest, as the entire tower came crashing down. They all landed with a sickening wet thud and slid along the floor. Instinctively, I reached down to stack them back up, but as I grabbed a smaller box, the flaps peeled open and a red shape fell out, plopping to the floor, leaving a small brown stain, a human heart. I watched in horror as the organ began to roll and beat, spurting translucent red-tinged blood over the ground. I turned away and ran to the bathroom, cramming my head into the toilet and vomiting a thick stream of acidic bile into the water. As I lurched out the remainder of my lunch, I yanked my phone from my pocket and began to dial 911. I stared in horror, watching towards the bathroom doorframe, expecting something or someone to walk in to stop me. When I finally connected, I explained that to men who worked for my dad dropped off boxes of harvested organs. I screamed into the phone, begging for help. The lady on the other end was confused but trying to help. Just stay on the line and try to breathe. I went to respond and ask how long the cops would be, but something awful yanked me from my panic. My dad's voice echoed through the house. "You shouldn't have done that." I rose to my feet, my phone sliding from my grasp and cracking. "On the tiles, Dad?" I called out, to no response. I slowly made my way through my house, the shadows of the setting sun causing everything to feel foggy and the hallways longer. "Dad? Dad, was that you?" Once again, nobody called back. I turned the final corner and the forbidden room came into view. The boxes had been opened. I saw body parts and organs strewn about, fingers, a shredded arm, an eyeball. As I got closer, I locked eyes with him, my father piecing himself back together. Story 1 ends here. Now, let's begin story 2. As long as the door stays closed. I've always had Wallace and Dan in my life. These two are not just my best friends. They're the closest thing to a family I've ever had. I can't remember a time when they weren't a part of my life. It's not a matter of obsessing over one another. They've just always been there for me. I care for them like they were my own foot or an arm. They just have to be there for things to work, you know. Things weren't going so well for me back. In those days, most of the time I sat at home, isolating myself. I didn't eat much. I slept even worse. I was stuck in a dark place, and I couldn't really force myself out of it. Luckily, I didn't have to. I had people in my life who cared enough to take that step for me, and my buddies were adamant about bringing me back on my feet, straighten my back, so to speak. Wallace put together a bit of a celebration. First, drinks at his place, chicken wings, cheese snacks, and poker. Then take an Uber downtown for more drinks and meeting some people. Dan had some friends from work we were going to hang out with. Good people, like a work family, he said. Not my usual deal, but I could see that I needed to make an effort. So I dug around in my closet until I found something colorful and went to spend a night with the boys. We were originally going to Dan's place, but his sister was in town and needed to crash on his couch. She was welcome to come along, but she wasn't up to it. So, at the last minute, we switched to Wallace's place, a row house on a rundown street, but in a good part of town, the kind of street that has a cigarette-infused corner shop just across from a Whole Foods. Wallace and Dan met me out by the curb. "I don't think he's taken his medicine, Wally," said Dan. "I'd have to agree, Dan," said Wally. "They always did this thing where they kept repeating each other's names when they wanted to make a point." I could see where this was going a mile away. "Good thing we had a chat with Dr. Heineken," nodded Dan. "We know your dosage. And if he got it wrong, we got 3 six-packs of second opinions from Nurse Guinness," added Wallace. "Nurses can't write prescriptions," I added. "They can in Canada," grinned Dan. "Look it up, it's true. This don't look like Ontario to me," I said. "But I get your point. The man is down bad," huffed Wallace. "He's gonna need all the help he can get." We settled down around the dinner table, had some chicken wings, a couple of beers, and talked for a while. Wallace had a pretty bare-bones place, not much stuff on the walls. A living room, a bedroom, and a small guest room that doubled as emergency. Storage. It was the kind of bachelor pad that had a slight echo to it if you listened closely, but it had all the essentials. A nice couch, a big TV, and a bed that hadn't had its sheets changed for a solid 2 months. Dan talked a lot about his sister coming to town, how she kept nagging him about pointless things, how he was the one helping her out, and she acted like she was the one taking care of him. "I'm not the one who cheated on my husband and got kicked out," Dan scoffed. "I'm not the one who quit my job on a whim to slack on my little brother's couch." "You're right," Wallace added. "You'd be very faithful to your husband. Bless your heart." "Damn straight," Dan nodded. "Too bad I'm into women." "Shame," I said. "I'd marry you." "Of course you would. You both would. I'm amazing." Wallace whipped out a deck of cards and put on something from Netflix in the background, some reality show. Wallace usually liked to have a lot of sounds going on around him. He didn't like it when things got too quiet. He was from a big family, so it didn't take much for him to feel alone. I was on the opposite side of the spectrum, being an only child. Dan was somewhere in the middle. The two of them might sound like idiots, but they were more successful than people give them credit for. Wallace worked with overseas shipping, and Dan was shift manager at a bottling plant. Not the kind of titles that needed years of study to reach, but the kind of positions that require a good head on your shoulders. They were solid people, great under pressure and honest to a fault. We played a couple of rounds, chit-chatting between games. Wallace was a great bluffer. The only thing you could know for sure is that whatever you thought he had something different. But when you figure that out, he changes to something else. He is the kind of player who always plays the person and not the cards, and he's damn good at it. Dan, on the other hand, is a wild card. He can go Elin on the most random nonsense, but he can also quit when he's far ahead. He's a complete fluke, but sometimes that's what it takes to beat a guy like Wallace. We'd been playing for about an hour when I had to use the bathroom. I hurried away, locked the door, did my busyness, and reached for a towel to dry my hands. Problem was, Wallace's bathroom was downright nasty. Toothpaste flicks on the bathroom mirror and a funky smell seeping into the guest hand towels. I could tell they'd been there for a while. Most things had this faint yellow tinge. I decided to get a fresh towel. I figured he had a couple hidden away for fancy company, so I dug through a pile of fresh laundry. Nothing peculiar there. I dug round some more. As I did, I heard the guys call out from the other room, telling me where to find more toilet paper if needed. There was a cabinet under the sink, a big one. It didn't have any handles, but I could tell you could open it. There was a magnet on the side, so I slid a finger in there and pulled it open. I think it had some kind of lock, because there was a bit of a forceful click. I think I broke it. Something small spilled out and moved across my arms. Maggots, fat little white things, contracting and extending in a sickly rhythm. They were all over the inside of the cabinet at first. It looked like Wallace had crammed a big black trash bag in there. But looking a little closer, the details got clearer. It was a corpse. The body was wrapped in a black shirt and dark jeans. No shoes or socks. It had decayed into a desaturated greyish-green, almost mummified. Thin brown hair stretching down a wrinkled forehead, wide open mouth and hollowed-out eyes. Bone-yellowed teeth like bars to an insect prison. That's where the smell came from. It wasn't just an unwashed bathroom. There was a dead body, a real, actual, deceased human body. "You okay in there?" Wallace called out. You need something? I'm good. My voice was cracking. My arms shook as my heartbeat engulfed every other sound. I tried brushing off the maggots that had crawled up on me, but I kept finding more and more. I had to think fast. I brought out my phone and dropped it on the floor, squashing another maggot. I picked the phone back up and snapped a couple of pictures of the body. Then I grabbed a handful of toilet paper, cleaned up the maggots that had gotten out, and flushed them. I put everything back the way it was, but the door kept swinging open a little. I washed my hands again and stood by the mirror for a moment. I honestly thought I was having a nightmare. I couldn't fathom this being something real. A dead body in Wallace's bathroom. No wonder he didn't want us to be here for the pre-party. No wonder he was asking what was taking me so long. If he thought I knew, what would he do? I wiped my hands on the nasty hand towels and went back outside. The air felt warmer, but I think it was just me. Dan had brought out a cheese plate and some crackers. My eyes got stuck on the sharp cheese knife that was waiting on the far side of the table. As I sat down, Dan handed it to me. Away from Wallace, you gotta try this cheddar, he said. You know I don't care for Wisconsin, but this thing might just change my mind. Yeah, I'll try it, I muttered. A little piece. My honorable dude, I'm giving you 3. You're gonna want 3. All right. Wallace had this ambient smile, and he noticed me staring. His face didn't move a muscle. I'm sure he could see something in me had changed, but he didn't. Buckle. He just let my eyes stick to his. It's good cheese, Wallace smiled. I think you'll like it. Gotta pace myself, I said. Stomach's not what it used to be. Yeah, you were in there a long time, he continued. Real long time. We played a couple more rounds, passing the cheese plate around. Whenever Wallace picked it up, he did this little flick of the wrist that gave the blade a whooshing noise, like he held it upside down and then flicked it up with a swoosh. It kept breaking my concentration, and I lost 3 hands in a row. It wasn't even close. I didn't have the slightest idea what to do. I had pictures on my phone. I could excuse myself and call the police, but could I leave Dan alone with him? Should I bring him along? But wouldn't Wallace figure out that I knew if I suddenly got up and left? Asterisk, asterisk, there was also the possibility that I was wrong somehow. That Wallace hadn't done anything, that this was something else. The body looked really old. If it had been fresh, the whole building would have smelt like death. The body must have been dead for months, but that didn't matter. Wallace had lived here for years. Dan took a short break to use the bathroom, leaving me alone with Wallace. The reality show lingered in the background, covering the room in Valley Girl banter. Wallace kept his eyes on me as I held the cheese plate near. More importantly, I kept the knife close. I thought you didn't want to rush your stomach, he said. You're hogging the cheese there. I guess Dan was right, I nodded. It's good. Mind handing me that knife? He asked. I want to cut a few slices. How many you want? I asked. I want to do it myself, he said. No offense, but you cut M too thick. It's fine, I got you, I insisted. How many you want? A frown formed on Wallace's face. Subtle, but it was there. Not suspicion, but something else. Frustration. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe I was getting away with it. The discussion burst like a bubble as Dan came back with a vengeance. Salt, lemon, tequila shots. All the while, I could tell Wallace had noticed me keeping a close eye on the cheese knife. The reality show got stuck on a "Are you still watching" verification check, underlining just how quiet things had gotten. just the sound of cards being shuffled and flipped, the occasional clink of a glass. Dan offered me another shot, but I turned it down. My head was already swimming. "You want something fancier?" he asked. "It's a special night. Now's a good time to ask." "Nah, really, I'm good," I said. A thought crossed my mind, and I held up a finger. I pointed to Wallace as casually as my body allowed. "By the way," I continued, "don't you have that other card game in your car? The one with the white cards and the nasty jokes?" "In my car," Wallace asked. "You sure?" "Yeah. I think you brought it along last time we went out." "Funny," Wallace said. "That's funny." "No, really," I insisted. "I'm pretty sure you had it." Wallace didn't quite catch what I was going for. Dan, on the other hand, got up from his chair and pointed at the bedroom. "He means Cards Against Humanity. Wally, I think you got it in your bedroom." Dan wandered off before I could protest. I'd wanted to get Wallace separated so I could show Dan what was in the bathroom. Now I was stuck with Wallace again. He gave me a curious look. "You good?" he asked. "You don't seem all there." "You know," I didn't know what to say, and by the time I'd figured out a good enough lie, too much time had passed. He could tell I wasn't being genuine. Despite all the drinks I'd had, my tongue was dry as sand. I gave him a shrug and sipped my lukewarm Heineken. "I don't know," I said. It's been crazy." "You're telling me?" he chuckled. "Man, I get it. It's like when it rains, it pours, you know. One day, and it's all upside down, inside out." "Yeah," I nodded. "Sometimes it all just happens." The image of the dead body flashed in my mind. The strangest details stuck with me, like how long the teeth looked behind the retracted gums. Were all teeth that long? It made me hyper-aware of my mouth, making me smack my lips. "Change takes time," Wallace nodded. "We're here if you need it." And with that, he leaned across the table. I thought he was going to pat me on the hand, but instead, he snatched the cheese plate and the knife. He grinned as he cut up a piece of cheddar, giving me a wry smile. "No hogging the cheese," he grinned. "Not cool." Don came back empty-handed. He'd found some other board games, but he figured we shouldn't start Monopoly this late. Besides, it didn't go well with tequila. We turned back to poker. Wallace put on another episode of that show. We discussed the details of where we were going and who we were going to meet. Wallace kept talking about this guy from work that couldn't be there, to the point where it made me take note. It was strange for Wallace to bring it up out of the blue. No one had asked. Was he inadvertently telling us who the corpse was? "I don't have a lot of friends at work," Wallace admitted. "I think y'all would like Chris. He's a nice guy. He can be the nicest guy in the world. But we're going out for the dames," Dan said, matter-of-factly. "That's just the way it is." "Why couldn't Chris come?" I asked. "He busy?" "Not sure," Wallace said with a shrug. "Preoccupied." During our next couple of rounds, I had another tactic. I made sure our glasses were topped off. Both me and Dan had already used the bathroom, so I figured I could get Wallace to go next. That'd give me some time alone with Dan. I made sure. Everyone drank, and like clockwork, Wallace excused himself for the restroom. As soon as he locked the door, I fumbled my phone out of my pocket. Dan didn't notice anything at first, but as soon as he saw my demeanor shift, a worry settled over him. I unlocked my phone and put a finger to my lips. "Look," I whispered. "We got a call for help. There's a dead body in there." "What?" It's like he didn't register the words. I might as well have spoken a foreign language. It went, In one ear and out another. A dead body, I repeated. Look, I saved it. I showed him the pictures I took. He scrolled back and forth and scoffed a little. He was laughing as if I was telling a joke. I realized the light in the pictures wasn't the best, and it didn't help that I was holding the phone from a weird angle. It probably just looked like a garbage bag covered in white sprinkles. It's not a joke, I assured him. It's really there, right under the sink, stuffed in like the toilet flushed. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked back up at Dan. His smile had faded a little, but I could see he wasn't understanding. Perhaps, in his world, what I was saying was impossible. So before Wallace got back, I leaned back and whispered, "See for yourself. Go back in, check under the sink." Wallace came back and sat back down. Dan gave me another look and headed to the bathroom without a word. For the third time, I was alone with Wallace. This time, he could tell I was upset. I couldn't hide it. Not after talking to Dan like that. "You're really not looking well," said Wallace. "Maybe we shouldn't go out." Maybe. I nodded. "We'll just see how this plays out." "What do you mean?" he asked. "How? What's gonna play out?" Wallace leaned over the poker table, keeping the cheese knife close to his body. I listened for Dan to react to the body in the bathroom, but there was nothing. Maybe he was already calling for help while I kept Wallace busy. "You know, whatever," I said. "Whatever happens, happens. Whatever happens, happens." Wallace Lahat. Mr. I-need-2-no-where-all-bathrooms-r-at-all-times. Wanna tell me that whatever happens, happens, happens. Now I know you're not all right. "Well, maybe I'm not," I said, throwing up my arms. "Maybe I'm not okay. Is something bothering you?" He pressed on. "Is it something I did?" "I think it might be," I nodded. "Might be something you did." I've never been the kind of person to confront people out of the blue, especially not people I care about. But I'd had a couple of drinks, and I wasn't feeling like myself anymore. Hell, nothing felt real anymore. It's like I'd fallen into some kind of bizarro world where one of my best friends had turned into a cold-blooded murderer. But there was no mistaking what I'd seen. Don got out of the bathroom, and in the split second where Wallace looked up, I snatched the cheese knife from the plate, leaving the cheddar. There was the harsh noise of metal scraping against ceramic as I jumped out of my chair, holding the knife as a weapon. Wallace got up from his chair and stepped away from the table. Dan backed away with a quiet whoa. "Whoa, whoa." I pointed at Dan with my free hand. "Dan, call the police," I said. "Call them right now." "What are you doing?" Wallace yelled. "Put the damn knife down, so you can take it." I snapped back. "You want to put under the sink too?" Wallace shook his head, as if trying to rattle the confusion out of his mind. He took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. "What, exactly, is the problem here?" he asked. "The problem is, you got a goddamn body stuffed under the sink." Wallace cocked his head, and with a shrug, he said, "So, out of all the things he could have said, that's the one that surprised me the most." I thought he was going to defend himself, or straight up deny it. But no, he didn't seem to mind this at all. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't know what to feel. "Dan saw it too," I said. "I took photos. I showed him." "Yeah," said Dan. "Yeah, I saw it." I turned to him. Dan was lined up against the wall, holding his hands like he was at gunpoint. Dan shot Wallace with an accusatory look. I can't believe you stuffed the damn thing under the sink, he said, shaking his head. That's lazy, even for you. My feet felt light, and my head heavy. It's like there were so many thoughts pushing into my head that I had trouble keeping my neck straight. Like I was being crushed from the top down. A darkness sunk straight through my heart and settled in my stomach, burning with gastric acid. All the way down. It's temporary, said Wallace. Bad timing. Haven't had time to move it. Asterisk, asterisk, you need my truck, Wally. Dan asked. It's a bitch to clean, you know. Should be good, Wallace shrugged. It's just ash and bone, won't leave a trace. They were talking like I wasn't there, like I wasn't holding a knife. Did one of them have some kind of hidden weapon? How could they not see me as a threat? I unlocked my phone and dialed the emergency services, but left my hand off the call button. That got their attention. Whoa, 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 said Dan. You serious? What do you think you're doing? I'm not letting you turn murder into a fucking joke. That's what I'm doing. Holy shit, he's blanking, said Wallace. Oh fuck, you're right, said Dan. He is blanking. I held the phone up with my finger on the call button. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't make sense of what they were saying. I didn't know what to do, and I was just as ready to start swinging that knife around as I was calling for help. My nerves were a coin toss from fight, flight, or come what may. You're not making any sense, I wheezed. None of you. Wallace held up an open hand. Look, I'm sorry, he said. We didn't realize what was going on. This gotta be traumatic. Just put the phone down, said Dan. You can keep the knife? I shook my head. I did nothing. No calling, no cutting, no yelling or screaming. I just observed them and waited for a solution to reveal itself. Wallace stepped out from behind the poker table. The reality show was still rolling in the background. Two girls with wide accents arguing loudly over a birthday cake. We're celebrating, said Wallace, slowly. You remember that part, right? Yeah, I said. We're going out. Guys' night out, yeah, he continued. Do you know why? I've been having a hard time, I said. You wanted to take me out. That's not a celebration, Dan added. That's just being good people. This is a celebration. Do you remember what we're celebrating? Wallace asked. Do you know that part? I didn't. Thinking back on it, there was a bit of a muddled cloud over that part. It had come pretty much from nowhere. The guys had invited me out, and I accepted without a second thought. Like we'd done it before, but I couldn't remember when or why. Sometimes when you do things you wouldn't do, we blank out, Wallace added. Happens to a lot of newbies. What the fuck kind of sentence is that? I let out a joyless laugh. The knife in my hand shook, and long after the laugh was gone, the shaking remained. You're not you, said Dan from the sidelines. None of us are, or you know. We're different, Wallace nodded. Better. Wallace pointed to the bathroom, taking a step closer. That's me in there, he said. The real me, but I'm real too. Wallace took another step forward and extended a hand. Give me something, he said. The phone, or the knife, or both, but you gotta trust me. I don't even understand what you're saying, I said. How the hell am I supposed to trust you? Because you know me. You know Dan. You've known us long before we got here. We're the same brood, man, brothers. Brood, Dan scoffed, shaking his head. Don't like that word, Dan. Not the time, Wallace said, rolling his eyes. Dan held up a hand apologetically and shuffled away from the wall. Wallace was right in front of me. He slowly placed a hand on the blade of my knife. The Valley girls on the TV were laughing now. Drama solved. The cake was safe. "I can tell you we helped you," said Wallace. "I can tell you that you're the youngest. But no matter the words, you can still feel it. You know you can trust us." But I didn't know shit. I had a murderer wrapping his hands around my weapon, and I was hesitating. I couldn't stop that image. That black shirt, those dark jeans, the plop of a fat maggot hitting the ceramic tiles. "You want me to show you?" Wallace asked. "You want the truth?" I didn't. I really didn't. I just wanted to go home and forget that entire night. To go back to the time where we were just going to go out for drinks. Guys' night. And yet, I released the knife and nodded. Wallace dropped it on the floor. "Yeah." I sobbed. "I want the truth." We went out the back door. Dan was in no position to drive, but I saw him lean over a fence and do this strange hulking movement. After a couple seconds, his stomach rippled, and a transparent glob of jelly rolled out of him like a hairball. Then he was fine, sober even. No slurred speech, no swinging movement. He went and got his pickup truck. Wallace cleaned up the maggots and wrapped the cabinet in plastic. Once Dan got back, the two of them carried it to the truck and secured it with bright plastic straps. All three of us had to pile in the front seat, sitting side by side. Any other night of my life, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Now it felt like surrender. They played music and talked. Dan had to call his work friends and tell them we weren't coming to the club. Wallace seemed a bit peeved about it, but there was too much to do. At least, that's what it sounded like. Dan's position at the bottling plant allowed him access to a warehouse, and with that, he could get to some shipping containers. We rolled past a gate with an armed guard. Dan seemed to know him. They waved at each other. Apparently, it wasn't that unusual for Dan to drop by unannounced late at night on the weekend. We parked. Wallace and Dan got the cabinet. As they did, they gave me a tired look. "You might as well help," said Wallace. "You're gonna have us carry this on our own." I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know if I was still gonna call for help or not. It felt like a part of my conscience had taken a physical beating, like the decision-making part of my brain was swollen. The two of them just stood there, waiting for me to lend a hand. They weren't gonna move until I did, so I helped them. I could feel something frail and dry rolling around in the cabinet as we moved, like bags of old cigars. 3 guys and an improvised coffin. Our footsteps echoed against the metal walls. Hollow containers in neutral colors, most of which were rusted or scheduled for destruction. We went to the far end of the building and put down the cabinet. We all took a moment to catch our breaths. The container in front of us was just like all the others. The same neutral color, similar serial numbers, same company logo, a faded blue sunflower print. Dan stepped up and clicked the lock open. Then, he gave me some space, and Wallace tapped me on the shoulder. When you're ready, the container was slightly ajar. Dan was using a little flashlight from his keychain, casting my shadow across the door. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. I could walk away and never know for sure, or I could fling those doors wide open. There might be nothing inside, and I'd have 2 of my friends murder me. Or there would be something inside that I would be unable to understand. But as long as I was out there, with my hand on the door, I could be anything. A guy being a victim, a murderer. As long as that door stayed close, I was all of it at once. But I had to know which one was real. The doors swung open with a rusty whine. There was a lot of plastic and a lot of chemicals. vacuum-sealed bags. A hand on my shoulder urged me forward. Another hand reached ahead, pointing at one of the corners. "There," Dan said. "That's you." And with that, I broke into 1,000 screaming pieces. I hadn't just been in a dark place these last few weeks. It had been a real, actual space. Somewhere dark and fractured. Somewhere you were born and dying in the same heartbeat, dreaming of life, and somewhere in there, I dreamt of me. A life not my own, but someone else's. But I dreamt it so clearly, so vividly, that I wanted it as my own. I remember barking, a hunched skulking behind the trash cans. How I'd practiced standing and talking and walking. Changing Dan and Wallace had helped me. I knew them from before. There was a body in that container that looked like me. It had succumbed to my dream, and it had been replaced. And I'd wanted so bad for that dream to be real that I'd forgotten. I'd blanked. There was a body, and that body was me. Those were my eyes, unblinking as another fly drank itself fat off my cold skin. "You'll get there, buddy," Dan muttered. "Take your time." My mind cycled. I was real, but I wasn't real. I had thoughts, but they weren't mine. I'd done all I could to get away from that dark, but it was still there. The more I thought about it, the more I felt it. I stood there on my knees, looking at my broken face, lit up by a faint pocket light. My eyes looking back at me from behind a sheet of plastic. But those were never my eyes. In so many ways, we were alike, but we weren't the same Wallace. And Dan took me home later that night. They closed the container and locked it back up. We weren't going to use it anymore, and there were no more bodies to hide. The gang was all here, and this ordeal was going to disappear forever. From that night on, there would be nothing and no one that could say I wasn't me. They could run every test on my body, ask me any question, and check every atom of my being. I am me, but in every other way, I am not. It's such an alien thought to live with. This one thing is such a small part of my life, but it changes everything. I know I'm no different from what I dreamed I'd be, but that doesn't change the fact that it never happened to me. I wasn't the one who graduated high school or got my driver's license. That was another body, one that I dreamed of. And yet, I know all about it. I could point my math teacher out in a crowd, even though I'd never really seen the man with these eyes. I'm just a copy. But Dan and Wallace was different. Not only were they my real friends, they were also something more, something other, and even on that level, we are family. I know there are others, but they're not like us. They're not brood. They want more than to step out of the dark. It's been some time since poker night. The guys originally took me out to celebrate my arrival or crossing the line. I was the last addition to the group, and we'd finished the replacement just a couple of days prior. I'd gone so far into my new life that I completely blanked. On what we'd done, I still can't see it clearly. It's like smoke in a nightmare. We still play poker sometimes, not to celebrate, but just for fun. I still go to work and laugh and joke. I can enjoy a cold beer and watch my favorite show, but there's always that nagging voice in the back of my mind. Am I really enjoying this, or am I convincing myself that I like this? Am I laughing because that's what I dreamt I should, or because I find something funny? Where does what's real end and I begin? I don't know why I'm posting this. It's just throwing a message in a bottle into the void of the internet, I suppose. Hell, I haven't even used our real names. Maybe I'm just lying about all of it. Maybe it's just as much make-believe as my whole existence. I suppose if there's something I want you to take with you, it is that looks can deceive. Anything can be taken for granted, and anything can be a lie. The greatest perceptible truth of a human life can turn out to be nothing. So maybe we should just enjoy what we have, for as long as we can allow ourselves to have it. Even if it's just poker night with the guys. I guess, as the song goes, life is but a dream. Story 2 ends here. Now, we drift into story 3. Do you ever feel impending doom when you go to lay down in bed? I feel like I needed to talk about what happened to me, and I think you guys are the only ones who take me seriously. I don't remember much about my dad. Mum left him when I was 10 and took me with her. I was just a kid, but I remember them yelling at each other about something all the time before they broke up. Mum took me with her, and we moved to a different state, so I didn't get to see Dad much. At first, he'd call me on the weekends, but slowly he grew more and more distant. I think I was 13 the last time I heard his voice, and my 15th birthday was. The last time I got a letter from him, he must have moved because the last letter I sent him got returned. Then, much to my surprise, I got a letter from a lawyer informing me that my dad committed suicide and I was the sole inheritor in his will. I wish I could say I cried or even felt sad. Maybe I still held a grudge for abandoning me. Maybe he had been out of my life for so long I stopped caring. I am a little ashamed to admit, I was mostly just excited to get a house in Maine, once. All the paperwork was settled, I decided to stay at my new house for a bit. I didn't tell Mum any of this at this point because she wouldn't have approved of me checking out the house. Any time I even mentioned Dad, she would get very upset, thankfully. It was summer, and I have to say, Maine is beautiful. The trees as big as any house, a cacophony of smells from all the wildflowers, the mountains in the distance. At one point on the highway, I glanced to my left and saw a luscious green forest below me and a mountain, hiding its peak in the clouds. Off in the distance, it was truly a sight to behold. Nature isn't all beauty though. I did spot a coyote muzzle deep in the viscera that once was a deer before a semi-truck hit it. As I approached my new house, my excitement died down a bit. I guess I was expecting a wood cabin or something crazy given how secluded it was. It was a cozy one-floor house with a dilapidated front porch. The red paint was chipping away at spots to show another layer of blue paint underneath. At least none of the windows were broken. The roof was very slanted for the heavy snowfall the area gets. As I turned the key and opened the door, I was hit with a musty smell. How long has it been since Dad was last here? A wave of nostalgia hit me when I saw an ancient recliner with the memory of my father still in it. It was the same one he had when I was a kid. Guess he didn't abandon everything, I mumbled. To myself, his clothes were still in his drawers, food rotting in the fridge and pantry. The dishes had been there so long, the flies didn't even bother with them anymore. Looks like his last meal was some TV supper, the kind you microwave. I was tired from the long trip, but I couldn't sleep with the smell coming from the kitchen, so I spent a while cleaning up. Surprisingly, that did not curb my appetite because I was starving at this point. Sadly, no one delivered food around here, so I had to go for an hour drive to the nearest town with a restaurant. When I got back, the smell in the house was gone. I was tired and decided to go to sleep. It was really weird sleeping in the bed my dad used to sleep in, but I didn't have the energy to care. The next day, I was uncharacteristically hungry as soon as I woke up. I didn't even bother taking a shower before heading out to go grocery shopping. When I got home, as I took off my socks, I noticed swelling around my ankles, but thought nothing of it. There was an old wood stove in the living room that I didn't want to mess with the TV was relatively new, but definitely a cheap brand. Clearly Dad didn't strike it rich while he was gone. I was going through his stuff when I found a stack of old-looking letters. As I grabbed one, my heart sank. It was labeled to me at my old address. They all had returned to sender stamped on them. With shaky hands I opened one. Tears started flowing as I read the first line. I wish I could talk to you again, one. Last time, I love you so much. This isn't fair. I wanted to see you grow up into a kind and strong man. I wanted to see your first love, your first big success, and your first big failure. I wanted to be with you as you grew up, but I couldn't. I'm so sorry for everything. I can only hope you know I love you and never wanted to leave your life. I could only get through half of them before I couldn't continue through the sobbing. Turns out Dad didn't abandon me. He wanted and tried so hard to stay in my life. That's when, like a snake swallowing a rat hole, my sadness was eaten up by anger. I wiped the tears out of my eyes and gave Mom a call, hoping that she had a good answer for this. She always told me she never heard from Dad again, a lie she kept for 15 years. Mum, hi hun, how's it going? Me, why did I find a stack of letters to me at Dad's house? What are you? I'm at Dad's house right now, and I found all the letters he tried to send over the years. Whoa, slow down. You're at your dad's. Is he there? No, he's not. He's dead. Why? Why, Mum? Why did these get returned? How come you never gave him our number? Wait, your Dad killed himself. Yay, and he didn't leave a note behind, so I have no idea what he was thinking. The pain he was going through alone. Did you know Dad never dated anyone else? Hey, that's not fair. Your dad. Not fair. Not letting Dad talk to me wasn't fair. Honey, please, I was just trying to protect you. Protect me from what? No, I don't want to hear your excuses. I'm done talking to you. As I hung up the phone, I took a deep breath and focused on my heart rate. This was just all too much. What could Mum even mean, protect me? Dad was never abusive, and in all his returned letters, he only showed me kindness and love. I wasn't up for any more exploring inside today, so I decided a nice long walk would do me good. I grabbed my compass and made sure I had a signal on my phone before heading out. The path near my house wound through the seemingly infinite woods, and who knows where it ends. The clean air mixed with Mother Nature's perfume was a boon to my body and mind. The trees sang a peaceful duet with the wind. I didn't realize how out of shape I let myself get. I used to be able to walk much further before feeling winded. That's when I started to hear howling in the distance. A little freaked out, I decided to head home right away. As the howling crept closer to me, I also heard rumbling. Not knowing what that could be, but understanding it wasn't small, I started running home. I was so out of breath, but my adrenaline pushed me further. I did not want to find out what was behind that noise. About halfway back to my house, I realized I just couldn't breathe anymore. I imagine this is what an asthma attack feels like. I had to at least get off this trail and fast. So I tried to quickly stumble through the woods and hide under a big bush I found. The noise grew louder and louder, howling, yipping, and the sound of thousands of soldiers marching at high speeds came towards me. From my hiding spot, I saw them come down the trail, seemingly hundreds of beady eyes looking forward, and thousands of nasty teeth came down the trail like a tidal wave. It was a large pack of coyotes. Suddenly, it got quiet. I fought my body's desperation for air. Eventually it won, and I gasped for breath. but I dared not move otherwise. A twig snapped underfoot of my impending doom. I heard sounds of sniffing. They were close and looking for me. As one of them approached my hiding spot, it made a low growl. More twigs snapping and leaves shuffling. The owner of the newest noise started barking wildly. The bark was high-pitched and urgent with a trailing whine. Once one of them barked, more of them started. I lay frozen in fear as soon they all joined in. Suddenly, it was quiet again. After a few quick heartbeats, I heard them running away from where they came from. Eventually, I was able to breathe calmly again and made my way home. By nighttime, I was exhausted and ready to sleep. Before I could even lay flat, a feeling of approaching death took over me. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Just a small push, and I'd be gone. I tried to ignore it and still lay down, but the feeling just wouldn't go away. It got worse as I lay there. I wouldn't know what that feeling meant for a while, but I'm glad I listened to it. For whatever reason, I couldn't sleep in the bed, and so I tried Dad's old recliner. It was comfortable enough that in my state of exhaustion, it felt like leaning back on a cloud. I continued searching through Dad's things. That's when I discovered his personal journal alongside a black hardcover book. Flipping through the hardcover book, I found it was all blank pages. I quickly lost interest and picked up the journal. As I opened it, I felt like I was invading his privacy, but I also wanted to learn why he ended his own life. Early on, he wrote about his daily life and his attempts to connect with me. Turns out he tried all sorts of things, even hiring API to find me. Sadly, legally, he couldn't do anything since Mum had full custody of me. This part caught my eye. I've been swindled again. My health problems are going to cost me everything. I have. Someone answered my post online, asking for help, and they offered to sell me the cure. Like a fool, I contacted them immediately and paid up front. They sent me this book with nothing written inside. Just a plain-looking black hardcover book with about 100 pages, all blank. A few days later, in the journal, something weird is going on. I was going to throw the book into the fire, but as I did so, I noticed something strange. There was a big splinter in my finger from the wood, and it caused me to bleed a drop onto the book. As soon as it landed, the book flew open. Red scribbling started to fill the page. It looked as if it was using my blood as ink. I couldn't make heads or tails of what was written. The last entry in the journal. The book mentions all my ailments and does provide a cure for it. It's definitely some occult stuff, but I've dealt with the occult before. Plus, I don't have much to lose. At worst, I feel foolish. At best, I get cured. It wasn't hard to gather all the materials. I'm not sure on how to say most of the things I'm supposed to say, but I'm determined to make this work. I've always been pretty skeptical of the paranormal. I figured Dad was pretty desperate to actually attempt the ritual. Based on the date of that entry, it must have been a few days before he died. I had to see what Dad saw in the book. I really hoped he did find a cure, and there was some other reason he took his life. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and made a small cut on my hand. Holding it over the book, I let a blood drop splash its surface. It immediately sprung open like it was waiting for me, just like Dad described. The blood thinned out and filled in the page with writing and diagrams. The most noticeable thing was a weird-looking symbol towards the bottom. There was an incomplete triangle at the upper part, and below it looked like an upside-down sickle. This was all inside of a circle. You first draw the symbol in the blood of a goat, then recite this phrase wife, pubtu su bisum brogium, after putting a drop of your own blood in the middle of the symbol. The book says doing so will bring you into health. I wanted to sleep on it and decide whether I should try it myself or not. The bed still gave me that doom feeling, so I slept in Dad's chair again. Strangely enough, that night I had a dream about Dad. At least I think it was Dad. He had grey hair and wrinkles that spoke of his age, but his voice was just like I remembered it. He told me, please do the ritual, and soon. I'm so sorry for everything. Please don't hate your mother. She did nothing wrong. I was wrong and I should never have. That's when I woke up. Before even opening my eyes, I felt wetness in the bed. I was horrified. I'm a grown-ass man. I haven't wet the bed since I was 4. As I threw the blanket off of myself, I immediately saw my legs both swelled up like balloons. There were some huge blisters on my calves, and some of them must have popped in the night. The liquid, I thought, was urine was coming from the blisters. It was clear and didn't have a smell, but did feel a little oily. Like if someone watered down baby oil, that was the final straw. I had to go to the hospital. I hate hospitals. They only remind me of death and sadness. That faint miasma that permeates the otherwise sterile smell. The sounds of the sick and dying, along with loved ones mourning their last days together. The doctors ran an EKG on me to check my heart. They couldn't find anything wrong with me besides my legs being swollen and leaking fluids. They gave me some medication to help with the swelling and cleaned up and bandaged my open sores. Then they said there was nothing else they could do, and staying to just make sure would cost me more than I had at the time. I was pretty pissed because it felt like they weren't taking me seriously. An EKG is only a snapshot of your heart. What about blood work or an MRI? It wasn't like I had a cold. Maybe if I stayed, things would be different now, or I might be dead. A few days went by and I kept telling myself that the medication would work and I'd be back to normal soon, or so I wished. Instead, not only did the swelling and leaking not stop, but I also had pain now too. It felt like it was coming from below my diaphragm. Each breath produced a new stabbing sensation. Given all that happened recently, I debated just waiting for the inevitable when I remembered what Dream Dad said. Thankfully, I already had everything I needed. After the hospital visit, I decided to stop by the butcher. I wasn't sure at the time if I'd actually use it, but I'm glad I got it. At this point, I don't think I could manage driving my car or going anywhere in my condition. I went to the clean tile floor in the kitchen and started drawing the symbol from the book. Every breath was agony. I couldn't bend my knees from the swelling, and I was short on breath, which didn't help with the pain. I remember thinking to myself, I'm sorry for whatever I did to deserve this. This is hell. I had no idea what hell actually was. With the symbol done, I pricked my finger for a drop of blood in the middle of it. Wife Pabtusu bis Bron. As the words left my mouth, so too did the light from my eyes. I felt myself flat against a cold, metallic slab. The smell in the room was lavender fighting to hold back the smell of rot. I tried to open my eyes, but all I saw was darkness. Before I could even register what happened to me, a sharp object was cutting into my chest from the top of my sternum. I screamed in agony, or so I tried. I couldn't move a muscle, just sit there and endure it. That's when I felt there was a tube going down my throat that was breathing for me, pushing the walls of my throat to their limit. The sharp object was traveling down to my groin, leaving a clean cut in its wake. I imagine this is what that deer I saw the other day felt. Liquid began dripping from my chest and pooling at my sides. Something began cutting through my sternum, which thankfully didn't really hurt. Once they cut through completely, the agonizing pain started. They pushed each side of my ribs further out as if to access my lungs. I felt organs moving and squishing under the pressure. With my insides laid completely bare, I heard something besides my own gore. It was a sound like a baby crying underwater, along with musical tones that held for a few seconds each. Whatever was brutalizing me grabbed onto the foreign thing inside of me. Seconds became hours as they pulled it out of me. Whatever it was, it went deep. I felt it from my calves to my abdomen. If you've ever swallowed a hair and then pulled it out, you have an inkling of what I felt. Except instead of a few inches out of my mouth, it was a few feet and from my stomach area. Suddenly, I could move again. In my panic, I tried to swing my arms wildly to get whatever it was to stop. As I finally opened my eyes, I realized I was in Dad's bed. I could breathe fine. My legs were back to normal. I wasn't starving. My chest felt sore, but besides that, I felt fantastic. Deciding. I just had a very weird and vivid dream. I started my morning routine by taking a shower. With my shirt off and looking at the mirror, I noticed a large scar from the bottom of my neck to my groin. I shuddered. That had to be a dream. I couldn't live through that. The scar must have been there, and I just never noticed. That's strange. Book must have given me nightmares. After my shower, I was going to throw the book into the fire, but something compelled me to open it again. It still had the ritual on the page, but something new towards the back of the book. Son, I'm so sorry. For everything. I fucked up. Your mum was right. The debt must be paid, but I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't feel any symptoms until recently, but when they do show up, you need to do the ritual every 10 years. I tried to end it all, but the debt was just passed on to you. I'm so sorry, and I hope you can forgive me one day. Story 3 ends here, now. Listen closely to story 4. My last shift at the watchtower. My name is Adam, and I have something very disturbing to tell you. After I finished school, I wanted to travel the world, but my parents didn't agree to pay for it, so I had to find a job. I browsed through all kinds of websites, restaurant sites, stores, even factories and offices, but none of them caught my eye. A few days went by and I kept looking until I saw a job ad. I clicked it and was surprised to see it belonged to the Nature and Parks Authority. The main photo was of a green nature reserve with mountains, trees, and animals. Under it, it said, Fire Watchtower, Guard Wanted, Love Nature. This is the perfect job for you. My heart started beating faster. I felt this was it. A job in the forest was everything I wanted. I love nature and hiking, and if I worked in a tower, it'd probably be a peaceful job with a great view, so I decided to send them an email. I talked to them about things like the location, salary, conditions, and more. And now, here I am. On my way to that dreamy tower I was dying to be in. The road to the tower was somewhat long, about an hour. Suddenly, I got hungry and saw a cheap burger joint, so I decided to stop. I parked my car, locked it, and went inside. The place wasn't too crowded or empty, just normal. I sat down, and after a few minutes, a waitress came over. Waitress, hi. What would you like to order? Me? I'll have a regular meal burger, fries, and a drink. Waitress, okay, it'll be out in a few minutes. Want to pay now? Me? Yeah, sure. I paid, and she went over to the register. A few minutes later, she came back with the food. I thanked her and started eating. For a cheap place, the food was actually pretty good. After a while, I finished and left the restaurant, heading back to my camper. After about 40 more minutes, of driving, I arrived at the ranger's cabin. I parked, got out, and noticed it was already getting dark. So I tried to hurry. I didn't want to walk to the tower in total darkness. I approached the cabin door, knocked, but no one answered. I noticed the cabin was unlocked, so I went inside. It was empty. I assumed the ranger had already left and left the keys for me. I looked around and found them, but just as I went to grab them, jump scare, looking for something. It was the ranger, me. Whoa, you scared me, Ranger. I see you, just let yourself in, feeling right at home. Me, I thought you had left, so I figured it was okay. Ranger, I see you found the key, but that's not all you'll need. Here's a box with some other stuff: food, supplies, flashlight, and bear spray. Me. Okay, Ranger. You should be able to see the tower if you follow the path straight ahead. Me, got it. I started walking down the path. I don't remember exactly how long it took. It felt like a few minutes. I walked a bit more, and then I saw it. A tall, rusty metal tower with a small wooden roof. Wow, that's one heck of a tower, I said to myself, and began to climb. There were a lot of stairs, but eventually I made it. I pulled the key from my pocket and opened the tower door. It was really dark inside. I used my hand to feel around for a switch, found it, and turned on the light. My eyes saw a bunch of equipment I had no idea how to use. I remembered the ranger told me there would be a guide on the computer that explained everything. Let me summarize it for you, because the video was long and boring, and I won't waste your time linking it every day, no matter what time. I had to fill out a report including whether sunny, cloudy, etc., air temperature, wind, speed, and whether I helped any hikers. That's the general stuff, but the important job was spotting fires. If I saw one, I had to report it to the main tower, and they'd take care of it. That was basically it. I filled out my daily report, then went to bed. For some reason, I couldn't fall asleep. It was freezing. I hadn't even noticed there was a fireplace until I checked and saw it was all ready. 11 p.m., I decided to go look for firewood outside. I stepped out. The wind was strong and it was cold. I turned on my flashlight and headed down. Suddenly, I spotted a small cabin. I went inside and found a bunch of firewood. I grabbed some and headed back up, lit the fireplace, and finally had a peaceful night in the morning. I woke up to the sound of the big radio device sitting near the computer. A man's voice came through. Tower 26. Hey, I heard you're the new guy. I'm talking to you from the radio at Tower 26. Is this Tower 8? Me. Yeah, this is Tower 8. Tower 26. Just wanted to remind you to fill out your daily report and let me know if you see any fires. Me. Yep, I know. Tower 26. Cool. We'll check in. Later. Me. Okay. By Dot. He seemed like a nice guy. The guy from Tower to 6. Alright, time to get started with the daily report. I filled everything out, and when I was done, I made myself a delicious meat pie from a recipe my mum sent me. After I finished eating, I went to look out and check for fires. I sat there for hours. This job lasts 5 days, and they pay me $10,000 for those 5 days. So yeah, it's pretty worth it. While I was watching for fires, I saw someone shoot a red flare into the sky. Suddenly, I heard Tower 26 on the radio again. Tower 26, you saw that too? Me, yay, what is it? Tower 26. I think it's a lost hiker or something happened to them. I'm talking to them now. Oh, transfer them to your line. Me. Okay, hiker. Hello. Hello. Me. Hi, how can I help? Hiker, I think I'm stuck in the forest, and I don't know where I am. Me. Okay. Can you describe your surroundings? Hiker, Yeah, there are a lot of trees, obviously. I think I hear a stream and owls. And there are a bunch of bushes with round red plants. Me. Do you see two paths ahead? One to the left and one to the right. Hiker, yes. Me. Take the right path. I believe you'll be able to get out safely. Hiker, okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. Oh, by the way, before we spoke, I heard screaming and movement in the bushes, but I guess it was nothing. Anyway, thanks again. Radio disconnects me. Wait, hold on. But he didn't answer. What did he mean by screaming? I thought about telling Tower 26, but figured it wasn't anything critical. After that, I went to bed. At 2:47 a.m., I suddenly heard a voice on the radio. I got up from bed. Me. Tower 26. Tower 26. Tower 8. Do you read? Are you awake? Me. Yeah, I'm awake. What's up? Tower 26. I just woke up from a noise and stepped out to the balcony. I saw smoke in the distance. I'm not sure it's smoke, and your tower is closer. I need you to confirm it. If it is, I need you to take a photo. If it's just a campfire, put it out and send me a picture. If it's an actual fire, call the Nature Authority and the fire department. No time by .me. But wait, He had already disconnected. I had no choice. It was part of the job. I grabbed my flashlight, dressed warmly, and left. Oh, I almost forgot, went back and grabbed my bear spray. I started walking. I've got to say walking in the woods at night is a nightmare. In the day, it's nice. At night, it feels like a horror movie. I walked along the path toward the smoke. I heard crickets and foxes along the way. Eventually, I arrived. It was a group of teens who hadn't put out their campfire. I saw a small bucket nearby. I went to the lake to fill it with water. Then I heard a scream. What the hell was that? I quickly poured water on the fire out of panic and ran away without taking a picture. Just as I reached the tower, I remembered I still needed more firewood. I went to the storage shed, gathered some, and as I was about to leave, jump scare me. Who are you? You scared me. What are you doing here? Stranger. RUH. I refill the firewood whenever it runs low. Me. Oh, okay. What are you doing here at this hour? Stranger. While you guys are asleep in the towers, I refill the wood so I don't disturb you during the day. Me. Okay. Just don't scare me like that again. Stranger. Yeah, sure. I walked out and said to myself, what the hell was that? I saw him disappear into the darkness. I decided to ignore it and report it in the morning. In the morning, I contacted Tower to 6.me. Tower 26, do you copy? Tower 26, yeah, I hear you. .me. I took care of the campfire you reported last night. Tower 26. Okay, but I only got part of the photos. Why didn't you send the one after you put it out? Me. That's exactly what I was about to explain. You won't believe what happened to me last night. I went to check the smoke and found it was just a campfire, so I got a bucket and 26. Okay. Me. And as I was about to put it out, I suddenly heard a man scream from the trees. I panicked, dumped the water, and didn't take the photo. Tower 26, are you joking? Me. No. I swear. It happened. Tower 26. All right. I don't know what to say. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, okay? Y2 said there was something else you wanted to tell me. Me. Yeah. When I got back, I remembered I needed firewood for the fireplace. When I went to leave the woodshed, some guy was waiting for me. He scared the hell out of me. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he refills the firewood or something like that. I didn't really understand what Tower 26. What did you say? Me. He said he refills the firewood. Tower 26. That's not possible. When someone arrives at the tower, they're given enough wood for their entire stay. Me, what? Tower 26. Relax. It was probably just some homeless guy who had nowhere to sleep and made up an excuse to me. Yeah, probably. ... Tower 26. Anyway, I have to go. Do your daily report and we'll catch up later. So, I did my daily report. I rested inside the cabin for a few hours until I fell asleep. Suddenly, at 9 p.m., I heard knocking at the door. Loud knocking, jump scare. I woke up, startled. I didn't want to open the door, not after all the weird stuff that had happened. But eventually, I had no choice. I opened I-10. It was the ranger. He came with a basket of supplies. We chatted a bit and then he left. I made some food and went to sleep. What happened that night was weird. In general, it was a weird night. Let me explain. The cabin is surrounded by windows with wooden shutters like blinds that can be closed. There's also outdoor lighting, so you can see even at night. The shutters have small gaps, so you can peek outside if needed. Around 3:27 a.m., I woke up and saw a silhouette outside the window, but it didn't look like a person. It looked like someone wearing something strange, holding what looked like a small pitchfork. On his head were two triangle shapes that looked like antennae. I got up to get a better look, and it started walking around the cabin. I immediately hid under the bed, but it didn't try to come in. It just left something in front of the door. After about an hour of hiding, I came out. In front of the door was a skull, not human, but something like a deer or elk. It had a ribbon tied to it, and there was a bit of blood on it. I don't know if that really happened. Maybe I dreamed it. It was a strange night. The next day was normal. I did everything I needed, filled out the report, checked for smoke. To be honest, I hadn't heard from Tower 26 in a while, but I didn't think much of it. That night was my last one. All I had to do was sleep and leave the next day, so I went to bed around 4 a.m. While it was still dark. I was woken up by static from the radio. I got up. Me. Tower 26, is that you? No answer. Then I saw smoke outside. I rushed to the balcony to check, and what I saw was horrifying. I grabbed my binoculars and saw several of those same figures I saw before. It looked like they were performing a ritual or something. Looking closer, ... They weren't performing a ritual. They were cooking someone. I quickly pulled out my camera and zoomed in to take a photo, but I didn't realize the flash was on. As soon as the flash went off, they all looked directly at me, then scattered into the woods. But they weren't just running away. They were heading toward me. Only one of them came straight at me. I rushed inside and ran to the radio. Me. Tower 26, this is Tower 8. Please answer immediately. Me, Tower 26, do you hear me? Me, Tower 26, are you there? But there was no response. I didn't know what to do. It was too late to run. I hid under the bed, hoping nothing would happen. Then, after a few seconds, I heard soft knocking at the door. Then another knock. Harder. Then he broke the door down. He walked toward me. I saw he was wearing the same outfit as the one I saw that night by the cabin. I could see his big feet. I stayed completely silent. He stood there for a few seconds, and then left. After a few minutes, I crawled out from under the bed, ready to run. I exited the cabin and started heading down. Deep male voice growling, I heard him. He was waiting for me. I went down the stairs, not knowing what to do, so I hid. In the small bathroom under the tower, I saw him coming down after me, but he didn't notice I was hiding there. When I saw he was going, I ran. I sprinted to my camper, and just as I got close, I saw him chasing after me. Luckily, I managed to escape with my camper. Story 4 ends here, and now we enter the fog of Story 5. My daughter came back from her dad's house different. It's a long shot, but maybe someone will read this before the articles. Maybe even before the police get to my house. I want someone, anyone, to know why I'm doing this. Maybe with some perspective, I'll seem like less of a monster. I'm not a monster. I'm a mother. Divorce is a hell of a thing. After every scrap of evidence my lawyer and I gathered, every late night and early morning, every written testimony from everyone I knew, the stupid judge hadn't even read them, hadn't even looked at the photos of bruises. Travis had taken the classes and gone to AA, and that was good enough for your honor. Even though it was 50/50ths custody, even though I had half, I felt like I lost it all. I'd left him for Trinity. I did all of this to keep her safe, and now she was going to have to face him alone. I failed her. Explaining it to her was tough, but I don't want to, Mummy. I sighed, petting her head gently. I know, I whispered. I don't want. You too, either. It's not fair. Why do I have to? Because the important man said you have to. The rules say whatever he says goes. Why? I blinked the tears from my eyes. Because your daddy did just the right things. And the important man said that made him a good daddy. But he's a bad daddy, she whined. I sniffed. I didn't like to talk badly about her father to her. But at the same time, I never wanted to invalidate her. Because she was right. Travis was a bad daddy. I know. I wiped the tears from my eyes. It broke my heart that she'd have to go back there without me. I can't imagine what that'll be like for her. I'm scared, she whispered hollowly. I know, baby, but I'll be right here for you when you come back. My voice cracked with the fear and pain I felt going to AA and the abuse and parenting classes. Travis had met some new people, awful people, people like himself. I guess that's why it started getting worse. I guess that's what started the changes first. She started getting quieter, sinking into herself. The bouncy girl that sang and danced all around the house at all times, slowly, became the sullen, silent girl that sat in corners and spoke softly only when she needed to. I don't even remember when the sing-song. Mummy passed the ketchup. I need some for my smiley fries. If I don't get some, there'll be frowny fries. Turned into the mumbled, Mum, can I please get the ketchup? It happened over the course of the year, gradually quieter and quieter. She cut her long, beautiful hair. She stopped wearing her favorite dresses. She said she only wanted pants when I took her shopping, even for my sister's wedding. She would only wear a dress if she could put her little jeans underneath. These were just little things, but her personality was the first change I noticed. Few weeks into the split custody, I heard a shrill scream in the dead of night. I bolted upright, thinking he had gotten to my baby. It took a few blinks before I realized he wasn't here. I didn't have to save her. I needed to comfort her. I was at her bedside before I knew it. She flinched as I touched her. She was babbling, I won't tell, and I don't like that, and it hurts. It made me look at the bruises on her arms. A hand that had clearly grabbed too hard, with too much authority. He'd been hurting her again. It's okay, honey. Mummy's right here. I told her frantically. She screamed again and tucked her arms close, kicking her feet. Hot tears streaked her cheeks. Get off of me, she sobbed. Baby, it was a bad dream. It's okay. I soothed. Her eyes seemed to fix on me, and she flung her arms around my neck. Mommy, it was horrible. Trinity, it's okay. I didn't know what else to say to her. She sniffled, curling herself closer. They did something to me, she whispered. What did they do? I'm not supposed to say, she cried. They put something inside of me that was a lot to chew on. I mulled it over, knowing Travis had been into some pretty dark stuff. Who knows what he and his friends could have done to her, or have had done to her. Had they put a curse on her, or a demon in her? The idea that a malevolent spirit was feeding on my daughter both enraged and terrified me. I prayed with her, asking God to undo whatever Travis had done and protect her from him doing more. I petted her head, not knowing this was the beginning. Next came the appetite. She started eating and eating and eating some more. It was insatiable. I saw that girl wolf down a stack of pancakes as tall as her head and neck combined. I woke up in the middle of night to get a glass of water and found her sitting on the floor in front of the fridge, eating anything she could get her little hands on. She started eating weird things, too, like putting a pickle under a slice of cheese in the microwave, then eating it with a fork. Meat sticks with tartar sauce. Cottage cheese with ruffles, sour cream, and cheddar chips. Actually, that one was really good. She craved maraschino cherries. The most. She ate a whole jar in one sitting. It seemed like a growth spurt had hit her like a bus. Trinity started maturing in other ways too. Growing hair, filling out in certain places, body odor. I had thought she was a little young, but maybe. She was just an early bloomer. Then one morning, I was getting her ready for school, packing her lunch, making sure she showered and got ready, the whole bit. When she came into the kitchen fidgeting with her shirt, I was cooking bacon. I turned to tell her something when I realized she was turning green. I began to ask her what was wrong when she doubled over slightly and spewed rancid beige and pink puke all over me. I swore I could see the rancid, acidic, fruity, fishy smell. I gagged myself. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. She panicked. I grabbed a towel and wiped her chin where a little excess dribbled. It's okay. Are you sick? She nodded. My tummy hurts. She clutched it to demonstrate. I sighed. Go lay down. I'll call the school. She nodded again, solemnly embarrassed, before shuffling off to her room. Trinity kept throwing up, too, every other morning. She rushed to expel whatever racked her body. It was then that I started getting suspicious. I was frustrated I wasn't getting any answers from Travis. Frustrated that I didn't know how to help her. Her face began to change, not just as she grows, but her nose swelled up and her eyes sunk in. She started getting acne. Red dots paraded across my little girl's face and sores opened from her little fingers picking them. Her hair became greasier and started falling out. Her nails became brittle. She became brittle dot. Then I started noticing her body shape. Her hips and thighs got bigger, Her stomach distended, and her unmentionables swelled. Her feet and hands got so big they looked disproportionate to her body. Trinity was changing inside and out. She was irritable. Not regular maturing kid, irritable, but something else. She had rage behind those eyes sometimes. Once, she frisbeed a plate at my head. She picked up things she shouldn't have been able to. She toppled our statue of Mother Mary, breaking her open, beckoning hands. I bought her a cross to wear around her neck, but she never wanted to wear it. I sprinkled holy water in her food and she threw it up. I put salt around the door and windows. In her room, and I found them dusted away. One day, she winced in pain as she bit into a cupcake. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. Had the cupcake hurt her? "Sweetie, come here." She looked worried, like she'd done something wrong. "Come on," I coaxed. She came over with her head hung low. I gently touched her chin and lifted her head. "Open up." When she did, I was hit with the smell of decay. All of her teeth were laced with yellow, brown, and black. There were holes in some spots and cracks in others. Whatever this was, she was rotting from the inside. It was then that I called our priest about an exorcism. Father Wilkerson said these things take time. He'd have to get approval. He told me to take her to the doctor first, so I took her to the dentist. And 3 extractions, 7 crowns, and 18 fillings later, she was a new girl. It was some time before I heard back from the priest. I tried to ask him about it at church, but he always told me he was still waiting. I couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't sit by as my daughter was victim to some unholy spirit that tore her body and mind. Apart, she wasn't my daughter anymore. She belonged to the demon now. I cried myself to sleep often. She woke me up with her nightmares often. She kept just saying they put something inside of her, and I knew that Travis had put a demon inside my daughter to punish us. This all lead up to this morning. She woke me up early with a nightmare, and while she dozed back off, I drank my coffee. When she got up, she immediately emptied what little contents she had in her stomach, loudly retching as she prayed to the porcelain god. We prayed and ate, and she managed to keep it down. Then she got ready to shower, and that's when shit really hit the fan. I heard her scream. I ran to her, worried that some ungodly thing had gotten to her. It had. I burst through the door to find my daughter screaming and crying hot tears. She was naked, ready for her shower. Her hands clutched her sides as she fell back against the bathtub. "It hurts, she screamed. There was a mess of watery blood pooling on the floor. It ran down her legs. It was then that I saw the affliction. Her stomach stretched and bowed and moved. There was something moving inside my baby. A little hand pressed against the elastic skin, making a distinct print. My scream joined hers, and I rushed to her side. She grabbed my hand so hard, I felt the sickening crack and pop of my weak finger bones. "Mummy, call the hospital. I'm going to die." No, honey," I told her. "You're not going to die. We're going to get this demon out of you." She shook her head as she cried out a string of nonsense in pain. I reached for my phone and made 2 calls. I called the priest and told him to get his holy ass over here. I don't care about approval, we need this now. And I called my sister. She said she was on her way. I moved Trinity to the dining table, figuring that would be the best place to do it. She writhed and moaned and screamed out. Father Wilkerson came first. He really didn't want to without approval. He kept telling me to take her to the hospital first. But when he saw the state she was in, he decided to do some tests. He kneeled beside her, praying with her, Her screaming became even louder, and she thrashed and banged her head on the table. He sprinkled holy water, and she flinched and howled. "Fuck you," screamed my 8-year-old baby girl through her teeth to our priest. He steeled himself and rose to his feet, opening his Bible. He was going to do it. He was going to free my baby. That's when my sister walked in. The priest turned to see Jess approach, clutching her purse nervously. She took one look at Trinity and began to cry. She took her hand, holding it gently. Trinity seemed to calm down a little. "Auntie," she wheezed, her voice hoarse from all the screaming. "Hello, beautiful," she whispered. "I'm gonna talk to your mummy, okay?" She nodded, beginning to tense up as another wave of agony hit her. She screamed, and Father Wilkerson began praying again. Jess grabbed my arm harshly as she led me into the blood-covered bathroom. "You need to take her to the hospital now." I shook my head. No, you put a demon in her. I know it. She grabbed my arms. "You take her to the hospital, or I will." "There is no injection against the devil," I wailed. "This is the only way I can get my baby back." She slapped me. "You're a sorry excuse for a mother," she spat. "Come with us, or don't." She ripped a towel off the rack to cover Trinity's body, and I followed her into the kitchen sheepishly. If she was going, I was going with her. I'd told her I would always be there for her, and if that means she's stuck like this for a few more hours, then I'll be right there with her until we can get back to the priest. The drive was uncomfortable. I sat in the back with Trinity's writhing body resting in my lap. She wailed and howled as the unclean spirit racked her body. They rushed her in right away, and she was seen in record time. And everything changed when that doctor spoke to us. Still hear his words echoing in my head. Even now, as I clutch the pillow in my hands. "She looks so beautiful," I mused. She lay sleeping in the hospital bed, her hair a halo around her head, like the angel she really was. I love her, and that's why I'm doing this. Because she can't live in a world where what the doctor said is true. Because he told me my daughter is pregnant. Story 5 ends here. Now, settle in for story 6. Something stood outside my bedroom door every night for 10 years. I used to pray I wouldn't see it again and again, every night, buried beneath a pile of moth-eaten quilts, the only shield I had against the suffocating cold of that ancient farmhouse. But even then, I could feel it. That presence, that unseen force that drained every trace of warmth from the room and left nothing behind but a crawling, paralyzing dread. It was like something had latched onto me and pumped me with venomous anxiety. The worst part was, even though I couldn't see it, if I held my breath, I could hear it quietly approaching across the creaky floorboards of the house, making its way to me. Dad worked long shifts at the plant gone before sunrise, home after dark, always too tired to ask questions. Mum, well, I'm not really sure where she went. When she was around, she mostly slept or stared blankly at the television with Dad. The house had been her family's passed down like some rotten heirloom. She'd grown up in it with her mother, father, brother, and sister, none of whom we ever saw. She never explained why, just mumbled things about property disputes after my grandfather had died. Something ugly about who inherited what. It always seemed to come back to the house. Though we didn't speak to Mum's family, the stories lingered, whispers between my parents or from distant relations, when they would visit throughout the years. One of those stories stuck with me. When Mum was a child, her older cousin, who lived just across the street, contracted rabies. Instead of taking him to a doctor, his family staked him outside like some wild animal. They let him rave and howl until the disease burned through him. Mum told me she saw him once just before he died, crawling across the ground in jagged, awful movements, foam clinging to the corners of his mouth, eyes glazed. Maybe they thought it was the only thing they could do for him, or maybe the land just demanded sacrifices in the form of our suffering. Then there were the stories about grandfather. Strange, half-believed things muttered like prayers or curses. Mum said he'd been blown up in a chemical plant explosion. That's how she phrased it, blown up. Baby boomers had this way of talking about trauma like naming it made it. Smaller but he survived. Clung to a steel beam with one arm while fire consumed the plant below. Dad said, although my grandfather was a small man, he was tough, the way all the men in our family were after the war. World War II had hardened them in ways no one liked to talk about. They came back from faraway jungles and blood-soaked islands, but not all of them came back right. Sometimes I wondered if something came back with him. Maybe the curse was older than him. Its roots sunk deep into the bones of the house. Or maybe he brought it with him from New Guinea, from the war, from some place my bloodline wasn't meant to survive. The strangest story was the one about his capture. The story goes that he and part of his platoon had been taken by a remote tribe, one that the brass said were confirmed cannibals. My grandfather had thought on his feet, trading the tribesmen parts of their Jeep mirrors, shards of glass, anything that wasn't tied down for their lives. In return, the tribe's elders gave him and his company uncut gemstones, gifts, they said, or payment, or maybe a burden. He died when I was 5. I only have fragments of memory, a distant look in his eyes, the same unreachable stare Mom would, where for hours he used to burn things in a barrel out back. Most families had burned barrels then, an easy way to get rid of leaves, branches, things you didn't want to carry. Mom once said she nearly burned the woods down playing house with her dolls, making pine straw kitchens and trying to cook them dinner. Grandfather also had a habit of standing at the end of the long gravel drive, watching the road he'd take. Me sometimes, my small hand lost in his thick, leathered fingers. We'd just stand there, silent, as cars passed by, one after another, watching, always watching, until I got bored and tried to tug him back to the house. But he barely moved, like something was still out there, and he was waiting. These stories were the air we breathed, things unspoken but understood. I accepted them with the same quiet resignation my parents did. I didn't have a choice. I did manage to make a few friends growing up, but most were kids from school who came over once for a sleepover and never came back. They'd cry at night, sometimes soft sobs, sometimes loud enough to wake the entire house. By morning, their faces were pale, their voices shaking. They said my house felt wrong, that there were faces in the shadows in places they should never have fit. I'd see them at school after the summer or after the Christmas holidays. They would tell me the same thing. My house was weird, I was weird, and their parents said they shouldn't talk to me anymore. I never blamed them, because every night, beneath those threadbare quilts, I prayed. I prayed not to see it, and every night I heard it coming. The thing, as I had come to call it, would linger just outside the threshold of my bedroom door. I don't know how I knew, but the sounds of its approach would always stop there. Sometimes I was lucky, I would fall asleep before it would come for me, but for the most part, I wasn't so lucky. All I could do was stare into the shadows where I knew it stood. My father admitted to having heard it. My parents would sometimes see it come to my room as the shadow of a man just out of the corner of their eyes. It was the only way they ever said they saw it. But I knew that vision was a lie. Whatever was coming to my doorway at night had never been alive. Although I had come from a religious family, I didn't think it was some fallen angel or demon. It was something else. It was its own thing, and no name really did it justice. As I meandered through my adolescence and into my teen years, it only grew in power, fed by our misery. Maybe it was because I had my mind on other things, like boys, or music, or even high, school drama, and my part-time job. Always I dreamed of a way out of the house, a way out of the fear, not even to escape poverty or our sad lives, just a way to get away from the thing that lived on the cusp of my shadow. By the time I was 15, it had learned to slam doors and click light switches that no longer were wired to anything. The faucet would turn on at random when I was home, alone, and I continued to ignore it, because that was the easiest way. Only once do I recall Mum said anything about its activity without making light of it. Dad had been working away in Kansas on a job. Work had become scarce, and that left just the two of us in the house, living on Chinese takeout and fast food. Mum had lost the will to cook when Dad was away. You see, it happened when I was absorbed in some internet chat room talking to online friends I'd made over shared interests. Somewhere in the back of the house, I could hear my door distinctly slam shut. I assumed it was Mum leaving a stack of clean clothes on my bed. When I continued to ignore it, several loud bangs reverberated from down the hall. "Stop that. What's got into you?" Mum shouted. "That's not me." I sighed under my breath. The thing had won. For now, the sound continued. I already knew what it was, but Mum sprang past me, going for the pistol on her bedside table. I decided to follow her, and we crept down the hall together. As we rounded the corner, we caught one last glimpse of my door slamming itself and then slowly creaking open, as if something has released the knob and disappeared inside as not to be seen. My mother was on high alert. She was more lucid than I'd seen her in, really, forever. "Open the door. I'll cover you," she said, the pistol poised steadily over my shoulder. I did as I was told. I pushed the door open too. Nothing. My empty room, my empty bed. 2 windows with measured sticks in them so as to not be opened from the outside, in a house that was off the ground by blue, at least 2 feet with a crawl space underneath. I guess someone tall or with a ladder could have pulled themselves up from the outside. But none of the windows would open that way, either nailed shut or wedged, closed like mine. I know, super safe, but it was the 90s in Nohasville. I know I heard something. I saw, yay, we did. It was the thing again. Are you still going on about that? Her powder blue eyes flashed up to meet my own, and she laughed. I thought, you had grown out of obsessing over those silly old stories, Mum said, lowering the pistol down at her side. Just got busy, I guess, with other stuff, I said. You know, I used to think something like that there was something scary that was coming to me. I used to see it, like it was there, but not there. What did it look like? I asked. Way more enthusiastic than I meant, but this may have been my only chance. Any other time, I asked, Mum had changed the subject, or said I was just a fraidy cat. Now there was proof. Proof that my parents had been gaslighting me my entire childhood. The faraway look in her eyes returned, and she didn't say anything for a long time. I waited, almost sure I'd missed my chance, until she spoke up again, like thick white smoke. Like when we would burn pine straw at the camp to catch the logs on fire, remember? I nodded. She didn't say anything else, just slipped away to return to the couch. I thought about the faces that the sleepover kids had mentioned. That image had been much worse to me, but maybe the thing appeared as something different to everyone and at different times. A man-shaped shadow in the hall, a cloud of white smoke, faces in the dark. Whatever it was, it knew us, and it was still watching. Dad worked off until I was 16. Pipe fitting had taken him across the south, but it came to an end after a job in Galveston. One weekend, he came home quieter than usual, thinner too, and one night while nursing what he thought was just the worst stomachache of his life, Mum rushed him to the ER. His appendix had ruptured 3 days earlier. By the time doctors figured it out, the damage had been done. They told us to buy a casket. For weeks, he drifted in and out of a haze, tangled in tubes, his body fighting the infection while the morphine and antibiotics kept him straddling a fragile line. I remember sitting by his hospital bed, watching the sweat bead on his brow, listening to him talk to people who weren't there. Once, he called out for his mother, voice soft and frightened like a small child. That's what stuck with me the most, how small he sounded, while he hovered in that place between worlds. I stayed with his sister. My days were a blur of finals that I failed and classes I barely absorbed. At night, I crashed on my aunt's stiff couch. What I remember most is how well I slept in those few weeks, and how much I hated myself for it. I always slept better away from home. Dad pulled through, somehow. Against the odds, he came back to us. But something had changed in him and in all of us. We didn't. Know then that this would just be the first step toward what would eventually take him. That threshold hadn't been crossed yet. Not for many years to come. I wish I could say that that was the only scare with my father, but misfortune would come again and again. When I was a senior in high school, the cancer came back. It had first appeared when I was in 8th grade cells, blooming like rot in the lining of his bladder. This time, it was much worse. The chemo was brutal, and Dad had to undergo a radioactive wash. I still remember the way he cleaned the toilet afterward with spray bleach, arms trembling, trying to scrub something he couldn't even see. I'm not sure how much good it did, but he tried. By the time I had reached my last semester, the cancer had been beaten back again, but it had cost my father. It had aged him, hollowed him out. With the missed income and my father's medical bills, we were struggling. Finances frayed. I helped in whatever small ways I could pay for my own food, my phone, all the extras, prom, senior gear, little things that added up. I covered it all with my part-time job and told myself I didn't mind. Things did start to get better after I walked that stage. The house felt lighter. The thing, whatever it was, seemed farther away. Not gone, never gone, but distant, like a storm that had rolled past. Its presence changed, less constant, less suffocating. It began to come and go like the seasons, with no pattern I could make sense of. When it was at the house, I knew it immediately. I'd feel it in the walls, in the static hum of the air, in the way shadows stretched just a little too far at dusk. Sometimes I could sense it pacing in the yard or walking the gravel driveway, keeping just outside the windows, watching, waiting. But when it was gone, it was truly gone. No footsteps, no flickering lights, just absence. Maybe it had found someone else to haunt. Maybe it needed to feed. I didn't ask questions. You learn not to after a while. A week after graduation, I met someone. Older, confident, I fell harder than I expected to. By the end of the year, we were engaged, and I was gone from the house. Moved out, moved on. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The thing didn't follow. Not at first. Those early years away were quiet, peaceful even. I could breathe without dread pooling in my lungs. Sleep without bracing for creaking footsteps or sudden door slams. I thought I had escaped, but the thing was never just part of the house. Its reach was longer than I understood. Its power wasn't gone, only dormant. And when the time came, it would call me back, because no matter how far I ran, I had always belonged to it, and it had been waiting. End of part 1. I will continue when I've recovered mentally from this recount.